What happens when a national treasure walks into a studio expecting a warm conversation, only to be met by a host who believes she knows better than everyone else? It takes just 37 seconds, barely half a minute, for years of goodwill, polished morning show charm, and professional respect to crumble. And on that Tuesday morning, it all began the moment Dame Judi Dench stepped onto the brightly lit set, carrying with her the effortless grace that had endeared her to audiences for decades. She smiled, the kind of gentle, genuine expression that came naturally to her, even under the glare of studio lights. As she lowered herself into the plush orange chair opposite Lorraine Kelly, the cameras drifted into position. Lorraine was already wearing her trademark daytime TV smile, not quite reaching her eyes, stiff around the corners, a smile that revealed more about habit than sincerity. "Dame Judi, welcome back to the show," Lorraine chirped, leaning forward with a burst of enthusiasm that felt pre-programmed. "I have to say, you look absolutely radiant this morning." "Thank you, Lorraine," Judi replied warmly, smoothing the sleeve of her navy blazer. Her voice had that comforting richness audiences had adored for generations, soft, steady, unmistakably sincere. For a moment, everything proceeded as expected. They spoke about Judi's new independent film, a quiet, thoughtful project exploring the emotional complexity of aging gracefully. But something in Lorraine's manner was off. Her laugh had a brittle edge. Her questions veered toward intrusive. And then came the shift, a slight tilt in her tone, a glint of something sharper. "Now, Dame Judi," Lorraine said, adopting a patronizing gentleness that made the crew stiffen. "At 88 years old, don't you think it might be time to step back from these demanding roles? Surely there are younger actresses who could bring more energy to these parts." A stillness settled over the studio, the kind that comes right before a storm. Even the camera operator paused, as if afraid to breathe too loudly. Judi's eyebrows lifted just a fraction, but her poise remained unshaken. "I beg your pardon," she said softly, too softly. Beneath the silk of her tone steel glimmered. Oblivious, or perhaps emboldened by her own assumptions, Lorraine trudged on. "I just mean at your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement? Spending more time with the grandchildren? Knitting, perhaps?" The temperature seemed to drop. Judi's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the arms of her chair. When she spoke again, the authority in her voice carried the weight of 6 decades of mastery. "Lorraine, are you suggesting that age determines talent?" No, of course not," Lorraine sputtered, but immediately continued digging. "I just think it might be time to pass the torch, to step aside gracefully while you still can." Silence followed, thick, heavy, electric. You could hear the air conditioner humming in the rafters. Every member of the crew stood frozen, aware they were witnessing something that would not be forgotten. "Step aside gracefully?" Judi repeated, her voice now dangerously calm. "While I still can? Well, yes," Lorraine replied, oblivious to the flashing warning signs. "Let's be honest, audiences want fresh faces, young energy. Not," she gestured vaguely, "not actors who might forget their lines or need help on set." That was the breaking point. The moment respect evaporated and something formidable took its place. "Forget my lines," Judi said, each word sharp and resonant. "Need help on set? Are you quite serious?" Lorraine sat back, finally uneasy. "I'm only being practical. We all have to face reality." "Reality?" Judi echoed, her voice rising just enough to command the room. "The reality is that I've been working professionally since before you were born. The reality is that I possess more energy, discipline, and passion in one finger than most people half my age can muster." Lorraine swallowed, realizing too late the magnitude of her miscalculation. "I didn't mean to offend," she attempted weakly. Judi lifted one elegant hand, silencing her. "Oh, but you did mean to offend, didn't you?" And in that moment, 37 seconds became television history. Judi's voice sliced through the studio like a finely honed blade. "You brought me onto this show not to discuss my work, not to celebrate my achievements, but to imply that I should shuffle off into the sunset because you believe I'm too old to matter." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every flicker of emotion, every tremor of tension as the confrontation unfolded. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, half wondering if they should intervene, half aware that this was turning into the kind of television moment that would be replayed for years to come. "That's not what I said," Lorraine protested, her voice thin and unsteady. "Isn't it?" Judi countered with icy precision. "You suggested I should step aside gracefully. You implied I might forget my lines. And you even recommended knitting as a more appropriate hobby for someone of my advanced years. Tell me, Lorraine, what exactly did you mean? Lorraine's famously unshakable confidence was dissolving before the nation's eyes. She glanced toward her producers off camera, hoping for guidance, but they too were transfixed by the unfolding scene. No rescue was coming. I was just trying to have an honest conversation about aging in Hollywood, she said, her voice shrinking by the moment. An honest conversation? Judi repeated, her tone rising with the full force of her Shakespearean training. It filled the studio, reverberating against the walls, leaving no room for misinterpretation. There is nothing honest about suggesting that age equals incompetence. There is nothing honest about implying that experience is a burden rather than an advantage. Silence followed. A long, weighted pause that made even the air feel different. Lorraine sat rigid, finally realizing she had awakened something far beyond her control. Judi leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the host. Allow me to share some honesty with you. I have performed for royalty. I have worked with the greatest directors of multiple generations. I have earned every accolade this industry can bestow. And you think I should take up knitting? The word knitting hung in the air with such disdain that even the lighting seemed to dim. Dame Judi, please. Lorraine tried again, scrambling for dignity. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Judi said, rising from her chair with the quiet majesty of true royalty, is your belief that age grants you the right to patronize those who have achieved far more than you could dream of in 3 lifetimes. The cameras followed her as she stood, documenting the exact moment Dame Judi Dench decided she had endured enough. Lorraine's eyes widened in panic, the realization dawning that the legendary actress was preparing to walk off a live broadcast. Dame Judi, please sit down, she pleaded, her voice cracking. We can discuss this like adults. Judi turned slowly to face her, and the look she gave could have frozen fire. Like adults? Is that what you call this? Suggesting I'm too decrepit to remember my lines? I never said decrepit. Lorraine insisted weakly. You didn't need to. Judi replied, her voice carrying decades of authority. Your meaning was crystal clear. You believe that because I have lived longer, achieved more, and contributed more than most people ever will, that somehow makes me less capable, less relevant, less worthy of respect. The audience sat in stunned silence. Many had come expecting a cheerful morning chat, perhaps a few charming anecdotes. Instead, they were witnessing the unraveling of the polished veneer of morning television, revealing something far more uncomfortable beneath it. Look, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot, Lorraine said finally, forcing her practiced smile back into place. Why don't we start over? Talk about your wonderful career, your extraordinary achievements. Judi's laugh cut her off, sharp and humorless. No, you want to discuss my achievements, after spending the last several minutes implying I'm past my prime. I was just asking legitimate questions about the industry. Lorraine insisted, though the fight was gone from her. Legitimate questions, Judi said, her voice rising again. Tell me, Lorraine, when was the last time you asked a male actor of my age whether he should step aside for younger talent? When did you last suggest that Ian McKellen take up gardening instead of acting? The comparison struck like a thunderbolt echoing through the studio. No one, crew, audience, or host could deny it. And in that instant, everyone understood Judi Dench had not simply defended herself. She had exposed a truth far larger than the moment, and Lorraine had no idea how to recover from it. The double standard was so stark, so unmistakably blatant, that the entire studio seemed to feel its weight at once. Lorraine opened and closed her mouth like a stranded fish, searching for an explanation that refused to come. That's different, she stammered. Different. Judi echoed sharply. How exactly is it different? Because I'm a woman. Because you believe women of a certain age should quietly disappear, while men are allowed to work until the moment they decide they've had enough. No, that's not what I meant, Lorraine insisted, though even she seemed unconvinced by her own words. Then what did you mean? Judi pressed, her voice tightening. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you brought me onto your show to humiliate me on national television. To suggest that everything I've worked for, every role, every performance, every contribution I've made, counts for nothing simply because I've had the audacity to age. Behind the cameras, the production team was gesturing frantically, signaling for calm, for a break, for anything that might regain control of the spiraling interview. But the two women were far beyond hearing them now. This was no longer a morning TV segment. This was a reckoning about respect, dignity, and the way society treats those, especially women, who dare to grow older in public. "Dame Judi, you're twisting my words," Lorraine said, desperation sharpening her voice. "Am I?" Judi asked. "Let me remind you of your exact phrasing." She paused just long enough for the silence to sting. "You said, at your age, shouldn't you be thinking about retirement, spending time with grandchildren, knitting perhaps? Tell me, does that sound twisted to you?" Lorraine's face flushed a deep crimson. Hearing her own words repeated back stripped of tone, excuse, and context made them sound far worse than she had intended, or perhaps exactly as she had intended. "I was only suggesting that there might be other fulfilling ways to spend your time," she said weakly. "Other fulfilling ways," Judi repeated, incredulous. "More fulfilling than doing what I love. More fulfilling than continuing to challenge myself and grow as an artist. More fulfilling than sharing my experience and knowledge with younger performers who actually value it." "Well, no, but nothing?" Judi cut in. "You assumed you knew what I should want. You assumed that because I am older, my desires must shrink. My ambitions must fade. My passion must die. You made conclusions about my life without knowing a single thing about my health, my energy, my commitment, or my capabilities." The silence that followed grew thick and suffocating. Lorraine glanced around helplessly, as if hoping someone, anyone, might intervene and lift her out of the hole she had dug for herself. "I think perhaps we should take a commercial break," she suggested, her voice lifting with misplaced hope. "Oh no," Judi said firmly. "We're going to finish this conversation right here, right now. You wanted to discuss aging in the industry. Then let's discuss it properly." Lorraine swallowed hard. She had awakened something she couldn't control, and now the consequences were staring her down with unblinking intensity. "The truth is, Lorraine," Judi continued, "your attitude represents everything that's wrong with how we treat experience and wisdom in this country. You see wrinkles and assume incompetence. You see age and assume irrelevance. You look at a lifetime of achievement and suggest it's time to step aside. That's not fair." Lorraine protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Judi countered. "Then explain why you felt justified in suggesting that I, someone who has been acting professionally longer than you've been alive, should consider retirement so that younger, less experienced actors can take my place." Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She stared at Judi speechless as the cameras continued rolling, documenting every second of a moment neither woman, and no viewer, would ever forget. The question didn't just linger in the air, it accused. It hovered between them with a clarity that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. Judi's voice, steady and sharpened by years of commanding stages far larger than this one, cut through the tense silence. "The fact is," she continued, "you brought me here not because you respect my work or value my contribution to the arts, but because you thought you could score easy points by patronizing a senior citizen on live television." A faint tremor flickered through Lorraine's expression. "That's absolutely not true," she protested, though even she seemed to hear how hollow her denial sounded. "Then why?" Judi asked, her voice lowering to a quiet, lethal register. "Why did every one of your questions focus on my age rather than my craft? Why did you ask about knitting instead of my current films? Why did you assume that being 88 means I should be put out to pasture?" The questions came crisply, each one landing with the precision of an arrow. Lorraine had no answer. Not because she couldn't find the words, but because the truth was written plainly across her face. She had done those things, and she knew it. "I see I'm not going to get a real answer," Judi said at last. She straightened her blazer with the kind of dignity that years in the theater gift a person. "Which tells me everything I need to know about your intentions and your character." As she turned toward the studio exit, under the bright stage lights, Lorraine sat frozen, finally realizing the magnitude of the disaster she had triggered. Judi's heels clicked sharply against the studio floor, each step echoing through a silence so thick it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. She wasn't just walking away, she was making a statement, one built on decades of hard-won respect. But Lorraine, driven by panic rather than wisdom, made one last, catastrophic mistake. "Dame Judi, wait!" she called, her voice cracking. "Surely you're being a bit dramatic about this whole thing." Judi stopped, not abruptly, but slowly, terrifyingly slowly, as though the very act of turning back required a level of restraint she rarely had to summon. When she faced Lorraine again, her expression could have made flowers wilt. Dramatic, she repeated, her voice calm in a way that was infinitely more dangerous than her anger. You think I am being dramatic? Well, yes, Lorraine said, proving she had learned absolutely nothing. I mean, we were just having a conversation about your career. There's no need to storm off like this. The audacity of the comment rippled through the room. Even the camera operators, professionals who had seen celebrities meltdown, cry, argue, and walk out, were shaking their heads. Just having a conversation, Judi echoed, stepping forward. Is that what you call systematically insulting a guest on your own show? I wasn't insulting you. Lorraine insisted weakly. Her voice shrank with every word. You told me I should retire because of my age. You suggested I take up knitting. You implied I might forget my lines. You said younger actresses could bring more energy to the roles I play. And now you're calling me dramatic for objecting to your condescension. Each accusation struck with the force of a hammer. Lorraine shrank into her chair, reduced now to a shadow of the confident host who had walked on set that morning. They weren't insults, she said feebly. They were just observations. Observations. Judi's voice rose, not in a shout, but in the commanding timbre that had carried to the back rows of theaters for nearly 7 decades. Fine. Let me share some observations with you, my dear. She stepped closer, towering not by height but by presence alone. You are a television presenter who built a career on being pleasant and harmless. You have never won an Oscar. You have never been honored with a BAFTA, a Tony, or an Olivier, and you have certainly never been made a Dame of the British Empire for services to drama. Her words echoed like a closing curtain, final, decisive, and impossible to ignore. You have never been invited to perform for the Queen, Judi said, her voice cutting through the studio like a finely honed blade. And yet you have the unmitigated gall to suggest that I should step aside. The words fell with the weight of a judicial sentence. Lorraine looked as though she might crumble into dust, her expression collapsing inward with shame and disbelief. But you're calling my professional judgment into question, Judi continued, her tone intensifying with every syllable. When your greatest achievement is reading a pleasantly scripted introduction each morning, you felt qualified to imply that I lack the energy for demanding roles. Me, someone who has performed 8 shows a week in the West End, while you've remained safely behind a desk asking celebrities about their favorite recipes. It was brutal, it was precise, and it was devastating. Everyone in the studio knew with a kind of horrified clarity that they were witnessing a moment that would be analyzed and replayed for years. You didn't see a titan of the stage deliver a verbal masterclass like this every day. Certainly not Lev, and certainly not directed at a morning talk show host. Dame Judi, please, Lorraine whispered, her voice trembling. I never meant any disrespect. But that's exactly what you showed, Judi replied, her tone now carrying the full authority of a woman whose brilliance had defined generations of theater and film. From the moment I sat down, you treated me not as an accomplished professional, but as a quaint old lady who should be grateful for your attention. That's not true, Lorraine protested weakly, but even she didn't believe it. Isn't it? Judi asked, her stare unwavering. Then why didn't you ask me about my technique? Why not ask about my approach to different roles, or what I've learned from working with the greatest directors and actors of multiple eras? Why did you immediately leap to comments about retirement and knitting? There was no good answer. Lorraine's silence confessed everything. She had exposed her own prejudices, her assumptions about age, relevance, and worth. And now those assumptions were held under a spotlight for millions to see. The truth is, Lorraine, Judi said, you don't respect experience or wisdom. You see them as obstacles to be moved aside rather than treasures to be valued. You think youthful energy is more important than skill, craft, and knowledge. I respect your achievements, Lorraine said desperately. Do you? Judi challenged, stepping closer. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, about this interview suggests that. Your questions showed no respect for what I've done, what I've earned, or what I continue to contribute. She paused, letting the silence expand until it became suffocating, and then she delivered the line that would become the single most quoted moment of the entire confrontation. You invited Dame Judi Dench onto your show, Lorraine, but you clearly wanted to interview some doddering old woman who would smile sweetly while you patronized her. Unfortunately for you, "I am not that woman, and I never will be." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Judi adjusted her blazer one final time, then turned toward the main camera and addressed the audience directly. "To anyone watching who believes age means you must accept disrespect or lower expectations, let me tell you something. Your experience matters. Your knowledge matters. Your continued contributions matter. Don't let anyone suggest otherwise." Only then did she turn back to Lorraine. "And as for you, my dear," she said calmly, "perhaps you should reflect on why you thought this approach was acceptable. Good day." With that, Dame Judi Dench walked off the set, head high, grace unshaken, leaving behind a stunned studio, a humiliated host, and a moment of television history that would be replayed for generations. Lorraine remained frozen beneath the harsh lights, finally understanding the enormity of her mistake. She had challenged a true professional, attempted to patronize a living legend, and been found utterly wanting. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second as she sat alone in the wreckage of what was meant to be a simple morning interview. Knowing she would never live down the day she underestimated Dame Judi Dench and learned, publicly, painfully, why she carried the title of Dame in the first place.